However, he never manages to actually have fun. On Monday, George plays the orientation video to their new co-worker Steve, reminding him to forget about himself and work his life away. Even the US president appears at the end of the tape to show his support for the company. While everyone is trying to work, Steve starts eating a raw hamburger, which makes Cindy complain. George explains to her that the man passed the test, so there's nothing he can do about it. Steve overhears. He shares that he went from level 2 to level 3 after spending some time in jail. This makes everyone uncomfortable, but they must endure it. At that moment, Charisma calls George to check if his medical exam went well and sends him today's workload with a new post-it. When George goes home, Michelle has invited a pair of missionaries, who tell him explosions happen when people listen to Satan. George ignores them and checks on his son to scold him for ordering fantasy books that may stir up chaos, but the boy still doesn't answer. Suddenly, George notices someone screaming and running outside, and it turns out to be his brother Julian. He explains he used to feel like a king in his job in level 5, but after he had a dream of his groin being replaced by the company logo, he decided to quit to avoid exploding. Feeling finally free, Julian's traveled to other countries and now practices pole vaulting. He also announces he'll be living in the family's pool house. Sometime later, George watches a show on TV where they present a man who supposedly had only 2 weeks left before exploding. They claim that when he started to see the beauty in things, he was able to survive. However, the poor man can only grunt when he tries to speak. This causes quite an impression on George, and he goes to the kitchen to try to look for beauty in a flower vase, only to feel very frustrated and break it instead. That night, George has another dream of him being President Washington. The next day, George receives a call from Cindy, who informs him she's replacing Charisma on level 4. George pretends to listen to her rambling while staring at Charisma's post-it note, obviously bothered by this change. Afterward, the announcer informs everyone that someone left level 4 for not being productive, and George gets the workload from Cindy, but her note only reminds him to be busy. When George gets home later, he ignores Cindy and starts overeating to deal with his stress while watching Julian practice outside. Julian notices him and tries to play fight with him, but George snaps and yells at his brother before walking away.